to Paul before he was cancelled as a medical practitioner. But I understand, and which is quite wrong, if the terms of reference were 3, they were the only 3 terms of reference that they should discuss with Dr McGinity. I understand, and I may be corrected on this, there were an additional 5 terms of reference put in which Dr McGinity didn't have any response to. Now, is that democracy and justice? It's not. And nor is it the Clinical Privileges Committee are not correct in doing that. Now, we've got to remember quite clearly that this northeast people out here, they turn around and they're very quiet sort of people until their situation is attacked. It is a community that's not a community of shopkeepers, it's a community that produces. In Launceston we are virtually a city of shopkeepers. We rely on the income from our outlying regions to support our city. Now, on top of this, we have the top medical professionals such as Professor Bernie O'Nader, who sent a very good reference for Paul, and that was ignored, not seen the light of day. We have Dr McDonald, the head of medicine at the Launceston General Hospital, who has said quite clearly he has no problem with the recommendations of admissions of Paul McGinity. Now, if our top professionals such as Michael Monsor, Rodney Boyle, and all those who have thrown their weight behind Paul McGinity are not listened to, well then there's a sorry state in Tasmania. I would ask Dr Peter Sexton to come to Scottsdale, walk through the North Eastern Soldiers Memorial Hospital, look at the honour board of those deceased ex-servicemen that are there in that hospital and gave their lives for this country for that sort of democracy. And this has tried to be taken away from them. And we should not accept that and should not tolerate it. There is a resolution that we have drafted, which we'll speak later, and it calls for, and it must call for, the intervention of the Premier. Now, why we should have the intervention of the Premier is quite clear. We have, in the far northeast of this state, primary schools at Branksome, primary schools at Ringarooma, and a high school at Winalea. And I understand the principal of the high school, Mr Whiteman, is here tonight. Could you acknowledge if you're here, Mr Whiteman? Thank you, Mr Whiteman, for coming. And you must be concerned because your wife has recently only had twins, and living in Winalea, you would understand the needs of these people. The quite simple thing is that we cannot accept this sort of situation because the autocratic approach that was made by the Medical Council did not take into consideration the people in Gladstone, Rushy Lagoon, Ringarooma, Winalea. They've never taken that into consideration. And what you're being classified in the far northeast is second-class citizens. In Scottsdale, they would say that you turn around and have a medical practice. But that's not fair and not democratic. The Premier is Minister for Education. He can turn around and intervene with his Minister for Health, Lara Giddings, and say, Lara, this is not good enough. And I presume, Sue, that you would know under the Medical Councils Act there is a provision within that Act, because of sub judice now, because of the case before the Supreme Court, but there is actions which the Minister can take, because the Minister always has responsibility there. It's in the Act for the Clinical Privileges Committee, the Health Act of 1997. So what I say here tonight is when the resolutions are put forward, I hope you will turn around and support them strongly. If you have any problems or had any problems with the Victoria Street practice, then why haven't you raised them, or Jasmine has formed, and see if they've ever done anything wrong? Christmas, a couple of Christmases ago here in this town, you might remember the children got very badly burnt in a caravan accident. You remember that? Well, the doctor that was supposed to be on duty, it wasn't Paul McGinity. The doctor on duty could not be contacted. Who was the doctor that went there and attended to those children and assisted with the paramedics? It was Paul McGinity. And this is why we will not accept the autocratic approach by these bureaucrats in Hobart. They might work 9 to 5 and have their rostered days off, but we don't have them in the North East. I'd like to thank Tanya and Kim for coming here tonight, and particularly Sue. Yesterday, when I spoke to her secretary yesterday, she said, Brian, she's at the General having a chemo treatment. And we wish her all very well for what she's done. If you're an ardent Labor supporter and will still vote Labor at the next election, don't forget you can cross-vote. Give Sue number 2 or Kim number 3, 2 or 3 as you wish. Or you can give your number 1 to Brian Whiteman if you're an ardent Labor man. We have not been looked after in the North East. We haven't had members since John Biswick living in the North East, and we've turned around and Sue has served this district very well. So I think I'm very disappointed in the 2 ministers, particularly Michelle O'Byrne and particularly Jim Cox, for this situation to be going on for over 12 months and little action by those 2 ministers. So you have the secret in your hands. If it doesn't get resolved, you know what to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Now, as per the agenda, we'll now take questions or comments from the floor. Did you want to go last? I thought you wanted to go later. Okay. We agreed. Sorry, I wasn't. No, I thought you wanted to go later.
I knew you would be able to go down.
All right. If you have a comment, please, the only time I will try and shut you down if possible is if you are foul-mouthed, libelous, or off the planet. Apart from that, we welcome any comments, and please, your name. I'm sorry we haven't got a remote mic. Your name and your comment, please.
Edna Williams.
Edna Williams? Beg your pardon?
Like a copy of the doctor's statement because they couldn't hear it.
Right?
Yes. I might have to read it again.
Read it again.
Can we get a copy of the doctor's statement for those who couldn't hear it before? Just while Matthew's coming up to read it again, are there any other comments? Yes.
David Brown, President of the North East Huntington's Disease Association. For 9 years I cared for a young man in Scottsdale with Huntington's disease. Sadly he passed away 12 months ago. But if I needed Dr Paul, he would come. Whether it's 6 o'clock in the morning for an injection or midnight because my friend had fallen over and broken a nose. Not many other doctors do that on a Saturday night at midnight.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I've got one. Sally, and I work for the doctor. Now, I lost my husband recently due to cancer, and no matter what time of day I rang, he was there. And one day, yes, no, it's not because I work for him, because he's a person who cares. And the way the bureaucrats have done this is beyond